Please rise to the pledge. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let's bow our heads. Dear Heavenly Father, be with us today as we conduct this meeting of the city. We ask that you bless those in attendance. We ask that you bless our city. And we ask for cooler weather. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for watching over our first responders and our military personnel. Amen. Okay, we have need approval of the minutes. Is there any corrections to the July 2nd? Anybody? Not, they stand approved as submitted. At this time, we have public comment, and this is for anyone that's here that's not, wants to address the city commission on anything that's not already on the agenda. So we ask that you hold your comments to 5 minutes. Come before up to the podium and state your name. Is there anyone here who wants to address the commission? Not?
Mayor, there was someone who had indicated they'd like to be on the agenda, but they've asked that that item be removed.
Right.
They've got another idea, I guess. Doesn't involve use of the room or use of Channel 8.
Okay. 6A.
Item 6A, the City of Garden City and the Garden City Police Department would like to recognize Sergeant Brecken Ralston from the Garden City PD Law Enforcement Explorer Program for his participation in the 2019 FBI National Academy's Youth Leadership Program.
All your leadership skills. Stand up here, young man. Good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioners. I'm pleased to bring Brecken before you. He attended the Law Enforcement Explorer Program, his participation at the FBI National Academy Youth Leadership Program last month. And to be able to attend, you have to be a son or daughter of a law enforcement official. And I'm going to let Captain Randy Ralston, who is the son, or the father of this young man, height-wise, yeah. But let him talk about it because Randy and his wife, Carrie, did a lot of work and prep at getting Brecken to get to this academy. So, start our academy.
Thank you. It was a grueling process, but well worth it. He worked hard. Really, it was a 3-year process.
Wow.
The age requirements, 14 to 16 are the age limits in there, and he had applied 2 years prior before he was accepted the 3rd year. So it took a lot of work, a lot of effort on his part, and you know, as a parent, I'm very humbled, and as a profession also, I'm excited about what represents our community in the future. So it was very good, very proud. Very lengthy, grueling process. It wasn't a walk in the park deal. Application process was grueling. Essays he had to write. Interviews, we had to go to Topeka several times for interviews with the FBI people from the academy and that. So, but it was all worth it, I think. And I'll let him talk about it. We'll test his leadership skills right now and see if he learned anything. But I think he had a good time. He talked about it, and again, I was very proud. And I'm honored that you guys take a minute out of your day to let him to recognize them. And these kids work so hard for what they do and represent our community well. So the first day when we got there, you're just thrown into a room at the airport with 60 kids. So that's a lot to push past and get to know people and start kind of your friends and who you all meet there. And you go back to the hotel, you mingle with everyone, and I met a lot of new people from Australia to Japan to California to New Mexico, everywhere. And it took a lot to
just go try to talk to everyone, make conversation with, because you're not like everyone else. Everyone has their different traits. So that was a good part that I've learned from that experience. And a lot of the classes we had were about leadership, we learned about bad leaders and good leaders and how to be just a leader and have people follow you. So that was a lot of the classes. And we also took a trip to Washington, D.C. We went to the mall, seen a lot of the monuments there. And I had a great time doing that. That was exciting to go out of Garden City and see that kind of stuff with all the history. And we got to run the Yellow Brick Road. That's an obstacle course, about 3 miles, I think it is. And once you qualify and pass that, you get a yellow brick. So that's an honor to have that.
That's right.
Very cool. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Brecken, congratulations. Congratulations, Mom and Dad. And Brecken, that's awesome. We're glad you represent this. And the Yellow Brick Road is in Kansas, so now you brought a piece of Kansas
A
back.
little
So.
different up there from the.
Yeah, well, that's true.
Item 6B, the City of Garden City and the Garden City Police Department would like to recognize explorers from the Garden City Police Department Law Enforcement Explorer Program for their participation in the 2019 Capital City Challenge competition in Topeka. Chief?
I'm going to punt this one too. We're going to test Sergeant Ralston's leadership skills to talk about the competition along with the Senior Advisor, Senior Master Patrol Officer Rob Scriven. Brecken, grab.
The more the merrier.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, thank you. We are really blessed with a department in the city, the community that continues to sponsor and put forth the effort with these opportunities that are presented. This is our third challenge that we've got to attend. Our second one in Topeka. This one was a little bit more challenging than the previous one, but it was a good opportunity to test our teamwork and our communication skills in law enforcement based scenarios. We did come away with taking a third place trophy in active shooter, and also Sergeant Ralston here walked away in the second place for the top explorer competition. So I'll let him talk about that.
The top.
Yeah.
Well, for the first day, as a group, we did very well. We're 16, 18-year-olds. All the other groups are like 20, stuff like that. So we were competing, barely getting, what?
What?
Oh, I thought you said. But anyways, that was a great accomplishment for us to be where we came and where we are now is just amazing. See how everyone reacts to stuff and is able to push through what they used to not be able to do.
Like Brecken was saying, we started out the journey with our teams. Everyone's really quiet. We didn't really talk to each other, and it's really incredible to see the amount of communication, teamwork that we were able to put through and come together and see now, the friendships and the bonds that you made and how effective we are now as a team. I think it's incredible and awesome to see everyone personally grow through that. So.
Yeah, like going in, I was real confident in our team and stuff, and I believe that, we came out on top and we did good, so I was proud of us.
If you look at our overall scores through that, we were generally 1 point away from a lot of third place, even second place in there. So very proud of the kids and their effort that they did this year. So.
What all did you do? Run?
Well, we did a lot of that.
Everything.
There was multiple scenarios that they had set up for us, including domestic violence, burglary, active shooter, like they said,
Crime scene investigation,
traffic stops.
Traffic stops,
felony stops, and
searching.
So a little bit
just
of everything.
everything. Yeah.
It's a good experience.
yeah,
Yes.
it was.
Yes.
Definitely think we came away better knowing that, going through that process.
Well, thank you.
Thank you for all your support.
Item C, the governing body is asked to consider and allow the mayor to proclaim August 4th through 10th, 2019 as National Health Center Week.
Okay, I'd entertain a motion to accept the proclamation.
I move that we accept the mayor to allow the mayor to proclaim August 4th to the 10th, 2019 as National Health Center Week.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve a National Health Center Week, August 4th through the 10th. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Is anybody here?
City, yeah, come on up.
Okay. It's a long proclamation, in very small words. Get in, come on out. Okay. Whereas over 50 years, community health centers have been provided high-quality, affordable, comprehensive, primary and preventive health care in our nation's underserved communities, delivering value to and having a significant impact of America's health care system. And whereas, as the country's largest primary care network, health centers are the health care home for 28 million Americans in over 11,000 communities across the nation. 1 in every 12 people in the United States gets their care in a community health center. And whereas health centers are a critical element of the health system, serving both rural and urban communities, and often providing only accessible and dependable source of primary care in their communities. And whereas the health centers develop new approaches to integrating a wide range of services beyond primary care, including oral health, vision, behavioral health, pharmacy services, to meet the needs and challenges of their communities. And whereas health centers nationally employ more than 220,000 people, including physicians, nurse practitioners, physician assistants, and certified nurse midwives who work as part of the multidisciplinary clinic teams designed to treat the whole patient. And whereas health centers are locally owned and operated by small business that serve as critical economic engines, helping to power local economies. And whereas the health center model continues to prove an effective means of overcoming barriers to health care access, including geography, income, insurance status, improving health care outcomes, and reducing health care system costs. And whereas National Health Center Week offers opportunity to celebrate America's over 1,400 health care organizations with over 11,000 service delivery sites, their dedicated staff, board members, patients, and all those responsible for their continued success and growth since the first health centers opened their doors more than 50 years ago. And whereas during the National Health Center Week, we celebrate the legacy of America's health centers and their vital role in shaping the past, present, and future of America's health care system. Now, therefore, I, Dan Fankhauser, Mayor of the City of Garden City, do hereby proclaim August 4th through the 10th, 2019, as National Health Center Week in Garden City, and encourage all Americans to take part in this week by visiting their local health center and celebrating the important partnership between America's health centers and the communities they serve. Signed and sealed the 16th day of July, 2019, Dan Fankhauser, Mayor. Who wants to accept? Yeah, congratulations. Get it? All right.
Ready?
There you go. Thank you very much. Okay.
Item 6D, the governing body is asked to consider and approve requests from Carol Fry on behalf of the Finney County Fair Board. The three that required commission consideration, there were some other requests that staff were able to administratively approve, but the ones regarding rates require the city commission's consideration. Item number 1, the Fair Board is asking for a special rate of $20 per container for solid waste services. Number 2, a waiver of the deposit and daily fees normally required for the carnival. Number 3, a waiver of the $50 fee for a beer garden. I don't know if we have representatives from the Fair Board here that would like to speak. Anybody here? There's a staff report in the memo that addresses this from a staff perspective. If you have any questions on that, we'd be happy to try to answer them.
Is that pretty much the same as last year? Normal containers, $35 per container, and this is $20. The big thing is the carnival, $200 per day, and a $2,500 deposit. But I think we've done this in the past.
Items 1 and 2 are consistent with what's been approved in the past. Item 3, I believe the first time it was requested was last year, and the governing body denied the waiver for the beer garden.
Mayor, I'd make a motion that we approve 1 and 2 and deny request number 3 consistent with alternative number 1.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve items 1 and 2, deny the waiver on the $50 fee for the beer garden. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Okay.
Item 6E, the governing body is asked to consider and approve a request from Aaron Stewart, Garden City Recreation Commission, under Code Section 6-35 and 6-133 to allow possession, consumption, and sale of cereal malt beverages on alcoholic liquors during, or cereal malt beverages or alcoholic liquors during the Siege 5K obstacle course on Saturday, August 17th. This is the area in front of Crazy House. This request is consistent with the request made last year.
Is that to numb the pain from
Just to
the-
clarify, it's just beer, not liquor.
Yeah.
Is that to numb the pain after you finish the siege, or?
There's no pain. I expect to see you out there this year, so.
Are you doing it again this year?
What's that?
Are you participating this year again?
Actually, I've talked in a few of the Rec Commission board members and participating, and they would like to throw out a challenge to this governing body.
It would be
I'm
my
usually all
advice
up for
that
that, but
the
I'm out of
commission
town. I
not do that
apologize.
under short notice.
Could we take that under advisement?
Takes
That'll be a special meeting. That will be a special meeting.
Think about that for next year. Training, we need training time.
Training, yeah.
There's
You don't want me
4
to have a
weeks.
heart attack.
You can do a lot in 4 weeks. So yeah, this is, the only thing that's really changed is we've moved the date up from September to August, so.
Okay. I'll make a motion that we approve the request. Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the request from the Rec Commission. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Item 6F, the governing body is asked to consider and approve a request from Genesis Family Health Center to waive the $25 park reservation fee for use of Ayala Park on Friday, August 9th for a 45th anniversary celebration.
Is this the first year for this? I guess it is, isn't it?
I don't know,
Says
Andy,
Alab-
do you want to come up and
I
take a shot at that?
I don't recall them doing it before, but I couldn't be sure to tell you that. I just don't remember it coming across my desk before, but it's possible that it has. So.
I think I think if this is their first year and they're not familiar with the rules and those kind of things, we could consider this. I do think just in general, and we've kind of talked about this around waivers for park reservations before, we need to be a little bit more, maybe review that ordinance and be a little bit more stringent about how it's applied, maybe even expand the ability of staff to kind of decide this with some hard and fast guidelines around this. But I guess in this instance, if this is their first time, I would ask that they make sure that if they do this again, to please adhere to the guidelines and the time frame that we need notification for this. But I would move that we accept the waiver.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the waiver for the park use on August 9th, 2019. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Mayor, there's one other item to include under Section 6, a new item G, and I believe you have a proclamation that you wish to read before you go down front and do that. We're asking the governing body to consider and approve naming it next Monday, Caleb Kentner Day.
Actually, it says that, is that the 26th?
No.
Monday's the
last day.
22nd.
How about we do the 26th?
Yeah,
Since that's
26th.
He can have 2 days.
Is there a motion?
I'll move that we approve the 26th as Caleb Kittner Day.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the July 26th as Caleb Kittner Day. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
So
All
Caleb,
right.
if you'll join
Carried.
the mayor.
It was pretty tricky
front.
leaving that off, so yeah.
What do you think? Stand up here so I'm your height. It's only 8 inches. I've never been up here. It's different. I'll read this. Whereas Caleb Kittner began his work for the City of Garden City on September 27, 2004. And whereas during his tenure with the City of Garden City, Mr. Kittner led and developed the staff for the Neighborhood and Development Services Department. And whereas Caleb was highly supportive of the origination and continuing success of the Southwest Kansas Builders Association, providing insight, education, enduring local contractors had a voice ensuring local contractors had a voice in building code adoption. And whereas Caleb provided unwavering support and professional counsel for the Holcomb, Garden City, Finney County Area Planning Commission. And whereas Caleb was a great supporter of Downtown Vision Incorporated and provided guidance and ingenuity to address the sustenance and growth of the Central Business District. And whereas Caleb worked to ensure the business community and members of the Garden City Area Chamber of Commerce had input into the development and ordinances and policies to ensure a positive business climate. And whereas Caleb was a tireless advocate and partner with the Finney County Economic Development Corporation in support of community and economic development activities, including industrial, commercial, housing development projects. And whereas Mr. Kittner is an admired leader, innovative professional, supportive co-worker and friend, and will be missed and remembered fondly by many people in Finney County. And whereas the City of Garden City wishes Mr. Kittner continued success as he applies his talents to the city of Waverly, Texas. Now, therefore, I, Dan Fankhauser, Mayor of the City of Garden City, do hereby deem it an honor and pleasure to proclaim July 26, 2019 as Caleb Kittner Day in Garden City, and urge all citizens to acknowledge and express their sincere appreciation and thanks for this significant contribution to the community and highly commend the manner in which he carried out his responsibilities as a member of this community. Signed and sealed the 16th day of July, 2019, Dan Fankhauser, Mayor. All right.
That's right.
Okay.
Item 7A, the city has received some lineup changes from Cox, and we've provided that in this report, consistent with the statewide franchise agreement with them. There's a couple of staff reports under the report of the city manager. If you've got any questions on those, we'd be happy to try to answer them. If not, we'll call your attention to some meetings that are happening in July and August. If any of those require RSVPs, please do that through CLIN. And I think we're ready for item 9A, which is the appropriation ordinance. If approved, it would be appropriation ordinance number 2487-2019A.
I move that we approve appropriation ordinance 2487-2019A. Is there a second?
I
Second.
Oh,
Second. Any further discussion? All those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Item 10A, the governing body is asked to consider and approve the renewal of the Rural Housing Incentive District Resolution, which outlines the policy and use of RHIDs within the city for 2019. And if approved, this would be resolution number 2820-2019.
I wonder,
Melissa?
Yes. Mayor and Commissioners, you have the full report before you. Considering the chat report came to us late in the spring session, we weren't able to renew the RHID program early in the year like we typically do. We are requesting that it be renewed as is, and at the end of this year, we will be presenting to the governing body a review of the RHID program with proposed changes for 2020. Again, this is our financial incentive tool we use to develop housing lots for housing here in the city of Garden City. It's been an established program we've used since 2012. Currently, the city has 16 developments participating in the RHID program. I have provided an attached map with our developments. 6 of the developments have completed building the housing units as outlined in their development plan. Last year, the city approved 7 new developments. In 2018, we had 18 homes that were completed throughout the various RHID development program. And currently, there are nearly 234 developable acres available for future housing developments. As a reminder to the governing body, the developments do come before the governing body. We have a public hearing before we pass those ordinances, and taxing entities will have 30 days once the resolution is passed to provide a resolution if they do not agree with that development. The alternatives before the commission today are they may approve the attached resolution, or the commission may not approve the attached resolution. Staff recommends approval of the attached resolution, which renews the RHID program for the remaining of 2019.
any questions or?
No, I move that we approve the attached resolution.
I'd second.
2820?
2820, sorry, dash 2019.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we approve Resolution 2820-2019. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We have a public hearing. 1:30.
Okay,
You want to take that?
that motion passed.
Yes.
The next item is 12A, a 1:30 scheduled public hearing on the matter of the governing body hearing questions, concerns, and comments with regard to the proposed 2020 budget for the city of Garden City. The governing body is, after opening the public hearing, hearing concerns, and then closing the public hearing, would then be in a position to approve the 2020 budget certificate. Melinda?
We have published the notice of public hearing in the Garden City Telegram. It calls for expenditures for 2020 at $123,336,435. The amount of ad valorem tax to be collected in year 2020 is $8,156,601. That's a mill levy of 38.5.
Wait till the mayor opens the public hearing.
66.
I don't think you did. Did you open the public hearing?
No, I didn't.
Okay,
I'll open the public hearing.
very good. I wonder if anybody wants to speak.
Okay.
I'll start over here on for 2020, you have expenditures that you have published at $123,336,435. Ad valorem tax required in 2020 is $8,156,601 with a mill levy of 38.566 mils. This is 1.09 mils up from the 2019 budget.
Okay.
There is a certificate in your packet that also agrees with a notice of hearing showing the total expenditures and the ad valorem tax required. And that needs to be signed by all commissioners present if it is approved. If you would like some information, would like you to refer back to your audit report on page 152. It does show a history of the Garden City's mill levies over a 10-year period of time. In 2009, your mill levy was 37.98 mils. This year, you're at 38.566. That's a 0.58 mil increase over a 12-year period of time. So if you do have any discussion that you have out in the community, I do think you can refer back to this information. I think the city commissions, past and present, have done a very good job in holding expenditures for the city.
Thank you, Melinda.
Thank you, Melinda. Is there anyone in the audience that has questions or comments about this budget? If not, I'll close the hearing. We'll need a motion to accept the certificate, I guess is.
Mayor, I'll make a motion that we accept the budget certificate as published.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we approve the budget certificate for 2020. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
I do want to just say, well, we appreciate all the staff's work, and I know this is, these are, you're really working to make sure the budget is really reflective of what we need, and so I just want to say thank you, and also for the extra time it takes to really, for us to understand and to really make sure we're communicating to the public properly. So I really appreciate that, and again, this idea of really making the city a really great place to live, so thank you.
Thank you. We're ready for item, I'll go back to item 10B. The governing body is asked to consider and approve an ordinance rezoning from R2, single-family residential, to RC, condominium townhouse district, to C2, general commercial district. This is, the location of this is 900 LaRue Road and is generally referred to as the Sports of the World Complex. If approved, the ordinance would be number 2839-2019. Melissa?
Mayor and Commissioners, you have the full report before you. The governing body is asked to consider and approve a rezoning ordinance from R-2 single-family residential and R-C condominium townhouse districts to C-2 general commercial district for the location generally located at 900 LaRue, or will be the future home of Sports of the World complex. The applicant before you is SMH Consultants and Kurt Lancaster. He is here. The rezoning of the property would allow for the use of the property as commercial. The proposed land use is consistent with the comprehensive plan. Future land use is categorized as commercial/residential. Planning Commission recommended approval of the rezone request on June 20th, 2019 with 7 members present, and they all approved the vote. The alternatives before the governing body are they may approve the rezoning request or you may not approve the rezoning request. Staff recommends approval of the rezone request.
What about that area to the right and to the left?
So
Is that already zoned?
The area to the left is already zoned C-2 commercial.
Yeah.
And then the area to the right is going to be rezoned at the time they decide what they will do with that part of the development. So we'll bring that before you again. So it'll remain
Is this the last
R-2.
step before they are able to break ground and start building, or?
This is one of the steps before they are able
Yeah.
to break ground.
Kurt, where are you? There he is. Do you have any comments?
Yeah, like she said, it's one of the,
Steps.
there's a few steps we still got to do. But this is kind of one of the big ones. And as far as, you asked about the piece to the east there.
Right.
It will remain RC.
R2.
Is that, it's
That's
R2?
R2, yeah.
Okay.
R2.
And, you know, she said we'll have to come back and rezone that whenever we develop it because that designation doesn't exist anymore. So regardless whether it's residential, commercial, that piece will have to come back before the board. So it won't be left what it is now. So
How are the plans coming along?
we're coming. We're working hard.
Good.
Yeah. It's a big project, lot to still do. We're working through, we're trying to shoot for like 50% design development by the end of the month, hoping to be at 95% first part of September. We've been working with the city on trying to get some dirt work type of permit so that there's a lot of dirt that has to be brought in, and there's a lot of dirt work to be done before anything can even go vertical. So we're trying to, we're working through that process to maybe try to do a little bit at a time, so while we're still working on the designs. So things are going. And
Good.
Going good so far.
Yeah, I move that we approve the rezoning request.
I second.
Be ordinance 2839-2019. And
I second.
second? It's been moved and seconded that we approve the ordinance 2839-2019 for the rezoning from RC to C2. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Item 10C, the governing body is asked to consider and approve an ordinance to amend the Garden City zoning regulations R3 multiple family residential district to allow commercial towers by conditional use permit. If approved, it would be ordinance number 2840-2019. Melissa?
Mayor and Commissioners, the applicant Network Real Estate LLC is requesting to amend the conditional use permit section in the Garden City zoning regulations. The applicant would like to be able to install commercial communications tower in the R-3 multiple family residential district. Currently, the R-3 multifamily residential districts only allow non-commercial towers exceeding 35 feet in height above the ground, including wind generation, television, and radio for on-site residences. Adding commercial communications tower to the R-3 multiple family residential districts would allow more location for towers to be installed and provide increased coverage. With the recent changes from KSA 66-2, 2019, small cell facilities may go in any zoning district. Since small cell facilities may be attached to existing utility poles, strand mounts, and traffic signals, this may reduce the amount of commercial towers that are needed in a community. Staff has proposed an amendment to Article 37 regarding antennas and towers. That case is PC Case 2019-23 to be in compliance with the state statutes, and that will come before you in the next case you'll be hearing. As you see in the full staff report before you, there are the changes that will be made to the zoning, the conditional use permit process. Planning Commission recommended alternative 1 at the June 20th, 2019 meeting, and that recommended the changes as approved or as made by staff. The alternatives before you are the governing body may approve the amendment as it has been presented. 2, the governing body may approve the amendment with changes. 3, the governing body may not approve the amendment. Staff recommends alternative 1 or 2.
What's the maximum height? You got
The
35 feet here.
maximum height will actually be changing that in the next ordinance, correct? Caleb, sorry. Yes.
Melissa, is consideration of this item dependent on approval of the next item?
No.
So I know that we talked about, is this a one-time permitting process, or is there an annual, where they register this and they have to re-permit every year?
No, this will be a one-time process that they go through the conditional use permitting process, and they go before the Board of Zoning Appeals. And so that board will be able to put further conditions onto the permit.
Because I'm wondering, who ensures the safety of these, if they're installed correctly, and then making sure that they're structurally sound and long-term?
We will be ensuring that through the building codes as well as the developer.
They probably have to submit engineering. And
Correct.
all that, too.
Yeah, as far as the height goes, these are all conditional use permits. So everything is based on that conditional use permit for each site, and it could be a little bit different. And they're all limited to their fall zone. So if it's in an R3 area, that's maybe in the back corner of an apartment complex or an area where some duplexes are, they have to meet the fall zone requirements, so that will limit their height automatically. So.
As long as it's a conditional use, it takes, they have to go ask, and there's some places where you probably wouldn't want these towers.
Correct.
Even though it was R3, but hopefully our zoning board of appeals would.
Because I knew earlier this year, did we pass something with some installation requirements, or I can't remember, it was brought up. Wasn't there something else about these towers? Is that the one that you're referring to, the PC case 2019-23? Is that?
That'll be the next case before you. We'll be updating the zoning regulations regarding cell towers and antennas.
And a lot of this is regulated by federal law and state law. We're making changes to the ordinance to comply with the federal law and state law. You have adopted some aesthetic standards in the recent past. Mike and I are working on a new code chapter that will deal with small cell facilities and other towers.
And that's probably what you recall is the small towers.
That's
what
it.
we've been working on.
Thank you. I couldn't remember what it was called. So.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions, commissioners? Not, I'd entertain a motion for ordinance 2840.
Make a motion that we approve ordinance number 2840-2019, amending the zoning regulations.
Is there a second?
Just to be clear, we're doing alternate 1 on this one?
Right.
Yeah, I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve ordinance 2840-2019 to, amend the zoning regulation, section 7.038. Any further discussion? All those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Item 10D, the governing body is asked to consider and approve an ordinance to amend the Garden City zoning regulations regarding cell towers and antennas. If approved, it would be ordinance number 2841-2019. Melissa?
Mayor and Commissioners, you have the entire packet before you with the proposed changes that we're recommending to, as Randy said, make sure that our zoning code ordinance is concurrent and up to date with Kansas state statutes. This will include meeting all the regulations as defined under Kansas state statute. The Planning Commission recommended alternative 1 at the June 20 meeting. And they approved that, which means that all the changes were done as presented. The governing body may approve the amendment as it's been presented. The governing body may approve the amendment with changes, or the governing body may not approve the amendment.
I make a motion that we approve ordinance number 2841, 2019 alternative 1.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve ordinance 2841-2019 to amending the zoning regulations. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Item 12B, the governing body is asked to terminate a previous poll testing bid award to SMI and award the bid to the next responsive bidder. Mike?
Good afternoon, Mayor, excuse me, Mayor and Commissioners. The governing body, you guys awarded a bid award. It's a 3-year poll testing contract to SMI, Smith Mountain Investments, at your regularly scheduled meeting on April 16th of 2019. SMI was notified that they were awarded the bid and they signed a contract on April 23rd. However, since that time, we've received numerous delays. They've notified us of many delays as to why they could not start the poll testing. And then on July 8th, we were notified by an email that they could not fulfill the agreement due to limited personnel. This is basically 76 days after the contract was signed. The next responsive bidder meets the non-destructive testing method is Alamon Incorporated out of Kalispell, Montana. And they've agreed to extend their bid for 60 days. They actually lowered it from $16.50 per poll to $15.50 per poll for 2019 and 2020. Then it goes back to $16.50 in 2021. So really here we've come up with 2 alternatives for you. One is to terminate the contract and award of bid to SMI on account of their failure to perform as promised in the above referenced contract executed on April 23rd, 2019. Direct the city attorney to send written correspondence effectuating the termination of this contract and award of the bid and award it to Alamon Incorporated based upon Alamon Incorporated bid being determined to be the best interest of the city of Garden City, Kansas due to their ability to perform and provide the service required promptly. Or number 2 is terminate the contract and award the bid to SMI on account of their failure to perform as promised in the above referenced contract executed on April 23rd, 2019. Direct the city attorney to send written correspondence again terminating the contract and the award of the bid and direct staff to rebid the inspection and the testing. Staff recommends alternative 1, and if you would approve that, then the additional cost to the electric budget would be $10,260 over the original bid for a total of $31,000, and there's sufficient funds in that account to cover that. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Was there any bid bond on this?
No, there wasn't. There was no bid bond required on this particular project.
So we don't really have any, can't do anything about it?
No, sure you can.
I mean, it's 50%
Let's be
higher.
clear, Smith Mountain Investments is in breach of the agreement. It's a signed agreement.
Right.
The agreement talks about liquidated damages, but in my review of the contract documents, there are no liquidated damages set out anywhere. So you will incur damages of $10,000 approximately. We have no direction at this point from you or from administration to pursue damages. $10,000, you'd have to consider whether or not it's economically feasible to do such. But we certainly could send notice to Smith indicating that the city's been damaged in the amount indicated by Mike and seek payment of those damages.
So how will that impact your overall, I mean, you tell me there are sufficient funds, how does that impact your overall budget?
Yes, there are sufficient funds in there. We actually are, when we put together the the bid contract. We actually thought, we estimated the contract to come in at $35,000 per year. So we were actually really close to what we had thought we would. And then the 2020 budget, we've budgeted money for that. And when we do the 21 budget, we'll budget the appropriate amount.
Well, I don't think it hurt to send a letter. What do you think? I mean, when you sign a contract, you're supposed to do it. I mean, you can't just say, well, I'm too busy, I don't have time. I mean, that's...
What I would suggest is that you go ahead and award the bid to the second low responsible bidder, direct city attorney and city staff to pursue payment of damages against Smith Mountain Investments.
See what happens.
Well, yeah.
Okay. I'd make that motion.
Okay.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded that we accept the next bidder, Almon Incorporated, for pole testing bid, okay.
And that's terminating the contract.
And
awarding
terminating
it to
the
the second.
contract.
Let's just
and
not
then also-
terminate the contract at this point. Just
Okay.
award the bid, and legal staff will pursue what needs to be done.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Okay.
Item C, the governing body is asked to consider and approve the installation of a new irrigation system at Valley View Cemetery. Andy?
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. A project that's been in the making for quite some time. We're finally able to bring it before you and seek approval. I'll read the background, but I won't go into everything. If you have any questions when we get to that point, I'll be more than happy to answer those and clear up any questions regarding that. But in 2018, the City Commission approved moving forward with the installation of a new irrigation system at Valley View Cemetery. The new system is needed because the current irrigation system is old, inefficient, falling apart, and takes a lot of maintenance to keep it running. Staff worked Site One Landscape Supply from Wichita, Kansas on the system design. Site One has been instrumental in helping the city reduce landscape irrigation on public ground using subsurface irrigation and smart irrigation controllers. Wilson and Company is overseeing the project as the city's engineering representative, and Chad Rowley from Green Tech Site One as the project consultant. The original cost estimate of the project was $1,200,000. Staff proposes to reduce municipal water by drilling a new well right in the north. We have the current well right. We're planning on moving it. It's not the one that's there is not operational. We're planning on moving it up by the shop in the northwest corner. And currently, with this proposal, it would approximately irrigate 17 acres and supply water for some cemetery expansion in the future to the west. The immediate relief in municipal water use is estimated to be between 8 million and 12 million gallons per year, which we would still be using that much water, but it would take it off the municipal system and it would be used by the well. Just such a big number, just like this year we didn't water much in the spring, so that would be on the low side. But if we had a year like last year and like we're having this month, those numbers would come up closer to the 12 million. In gallons per year, with an estimated annual savings of $13,000 to $19,000 in water costs. With the addition of the well, the new project cost is $316,575.94, and that cost breakdown is on attachment A.
I think this is a really responsible plan. I think it's a good investment. Pleased with how you've handled this, so good work.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I'm curious about the well. So, so when you move the well, and I'm sure it's been tested in the water feed. So, are you able, if the well isn't able to keep up with your watering needs, especially in the future, are you able to go back on the city system?
Yes.
Is that okay? So it's just a switch that flips it from the well.
Well, it's not quite that simple, but it's pretty simple. We have to have what we would call an air gap, and Mike and Fred can talk a little more about that if you need it. But the system has to be separate because we don't want the municipal water and the well water moving back and forth and contaminating. And so what we've done is we've in the design, there's a gap in there inside of a vault, thank you, inside of a vault, that if something does go down, we can disconnect at the source that went down, put a pipe in there, connect that to it, and that water would supply that section of the cemetery. In a temporary basis, it would get us through a summer, and then we'd come back and do what we need to do to fix the issue or create another source, another point of connection from the municipal water if we would have to.
Yeah, the layout was really, I mean, showing the layout of this irrigation system looks very efficient, and, I mean, the overlay looked, I mean, really, and I appreciate the idea of the zones. So which zones would the well, and I mean, there was a color coded, which I really like.
I think it's section 3. And it would be probably the last attachment. Okay, go back up a second, right there. That'll show you, if you scroll back where you came from, a little more, there's your vault to connect or disconnect the systems from each other. And what's not on there is valves on each side. Those are blowout valves on the top, but we're actually going to come in and put an isolation valve in there so we don't have to shut the system down to do it. We can just shut those isolation valves down, put that pipe in there, and then open those ISO valves up. But go ahead and go back up to the, I'm not sure if it's, I think it's on this one. There we go. One more, go up one more. There it is. So area 3, you have the, so currently we have a point of connection right here off of 3rd Street, and we have another one off of Bellevue up here between the mausoleum and the columbarium. And so those will handle those respective areas. And the well that was previously there is here by the office right now, and it's not operable. So we're going to move it up in this area out here by the materials yard at the cemetery. So, and it'll take care of this, and it'll be able to handle a little bit as we move to the west in the near future.
Andy, are you going to reuse the pump?
We are running off of city pressure currently, so we're just
using.
using.
I mean the well that you have now.
No, we're not able.
It's old.
Yeah, it's old. We're not able to do that. This will be a variable speed drive system, so if we want to put one head on, your pump doesn't just come on and run, but it brings it up with what you're asking for, the demand. It's flexible. It's flexible and fluctuates.
So will this bid pay for also the capping of the old well and the installation of the new well?
Well, the capping of the new well, I don't think there's much in
Of the
that.
old well?
I mean, it's not going to be much to do that, but yes, it'll install the new well.
And then that one will just be discontinued and covered up?
Yep, but it's the same water right, just in a different location. So we've gone through that, and we have all the permitting from the groundwater district management and all of that, so.
How do we pay for this?
It's in the 2019 GO bond.
So it's a bond, yeah, okay.
And those pay off in 2 years?
10 years.
10 years.
Are the rates favorable?
They've gone down a little bit.
Have they?
So,
Good.
and we budgeted for this in the bond and interest fund, so it's all done.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the installation of the new irrigation system at Valley View Cemetery along with the well.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the new irrigation system at Valley View Cemetery and a well.
Hold on, alternative 1 includes the bid for the installer, so with Gas Lawn Pros. So our recommendation would be to approve the installation of the new Valley View Cemetery irrigation system for the cost we discussed, and award the installation contract to Gas Lawn Pros out of Liberal, Kansas.
Yes. Alternative 1, please.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Okay. We're spending money.
Investing money,
Oh, investing.
Yes, this is long-term investment.
saving water.
That's true.
There's some other opportunities.
Mayor and Commissioners, item 12D, the governing body is asked to consider the following questions related to the future of publicly funded water recreation. 1, will the city open the big pool for the 2020 season? 2, does the city continue to provide publicly funded water recreation? 3, if the answer to 2 is yes, does the governing body desire to select a professional firm to assist in preparing future public water recreation options? Jennifer.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioners. There is an extensive amount of information included in your packet. I'm going to try and go through and highlight some pieces of that and talk a little bit about the attachments and links that were included for those who didn't have time to either review the entire thing or review it all the way through. So I want to start out by saying this process started almost 9 months ago. If you recall, in October of 2018, when you had the conversation after the 2018 season. And during this process, we've found out that this is not a new conversation for commissions. This is something that has been taking place for at least the last 40 years. It's just, and progress has been made. So that's important for everybody to see, is that each commission has had a different route. Some used very extensive community engagement processes. But yet here we are. We're still having this conversation. So that's where I want to start. I want to start with where the information starts from the background, which is in 1978. The first real details that we can find about the big pool and what was happening there. There's some detailed work for recirculation system, inlet replacement, new lifeguard stand, replacement of a north wall, completion of a new deck, new fence, new scum gutter lines, installation of 2 lifeguard stations, and a remodel of the bathhouse and filtration system. And at the time that this was bid out, it was between $200,000 and $400,000. We don't see a lot from there about what happened or how much was spent or which of those projects were selected. But we do know, by jumping forward to 1998, you see a memo to 1988, you see a memo from staff that talks about how much new technology has happened just over that 10 years. That the joints that had been tarred originally were no longer holding, even though the concrete was in good condition. But now that there was this great new product that was silicone, and there was a company out of Oregon that could provide that service, and staff recommended that we do that. We know, based at looking at the joints, that we did in fact do that, and moved the pool a little bit farther and maybe into better condition to hold up a little bit longer. Fast forward another 10 years, and the conversation that the community begins to have in 1998 is very, very, very similar to the conversation that we're having now. Revenue, number of bathers, the issues between water loss, and all of the heartfelt sentiments around the community about the love of this iconic big pool. Very, very similar. Reading through the memos that were written, I felt like they were part of the conversations I was having with the community over the last 9 months. Very, very similar conversations. Interestingly enough, during that same time period, the commission actually asked 2 independent engineering firms to come out and assess the pool. Try and give the community and the commission an idea of what problems they faced and, in their professional opinion, what they thought the commission should do moving forward. The first one came from Pascal Paddock, I believe is how you say that. And they said the overwhelming size and operational cost of the pool rendered a substantial financial burden on city resources. But they also understood that closing the existing facility would be a very difficult decision for the commission. And so they kind of gave 3 options: a new aquatic facility, renovation, a large renovation, or a minimal renovation. They believed all 3 would move the big pool forward and give it more of an existing life. The second engineering firm was MKEC Engineering Consultants, and at the time they assessed that 44 million gallons of water were lost in a season over a 79-day period. This resulted in 400,000 gallons per day. So you can see that just from 1998 to present time, there have been some fixes that have alleviated some of the water loss, because ours now is 200,000 a day. They also did a test at the time to find out how much of that was related to evaporation, and found that about 18,000 gallons a day could be attributed to evaporation, which is really important because that's a question we get asked a lot, and that's a question that I've addressed for several citizens over this time period. How much of that is evaporation? And so it's really great to have that information from 1998. They assessed that cost of the water that was being lost was about $780 a day, or $61,600 per season. Very similar to what we're talking about now. In conclusion, they assessed that the pool was not amenable to a minimal renovation approach as suggested by the previous engineer. And under the charge of evaluating the facility, they found that the pool either needed to be closed or completely renovated, and a new bathhouse. The total cost was estimated at $2.2 million for the renovation perspective, and that didn't include anything else. No attractions, parking, fencing, utilities, landscape, or site improvements, which we all know are very costly. During that same period of time, 1998 and 1999, 2000 and 2001, there were pool committees put together. The commission actually wanted, this is the community engagement process that took place during that period. A pool committee was put together, and they went out and they talked to everyone. They talked to schools, they talked to their neighbors, their friends, they held public sessions. So essentially what the city staff did over the last 9 months, what you asked us to go and do, these committee members did. And they did a very thorough job. If you read their memos, they took into consideration a lot of different things and weighed several opinions. We found letters from citizens that were given to that committee detailing either why it was important that the facility be kept or why it was important that either a renovation happen or a new facility be built. It was very interesting because it, again, took us back to the conversation we're having now. I threw in there an attendance report from 2000 because I thought it was really interesting that this was a time when there was no fee being charged at the facility. And we were seeing about 500 bathers per day during that time. A few more, about 170 more than we're seeing now. But at the time, the commission was toying with the idea of charging. And so that's why they came up with that document about how much they could charge, 50 cents, $1, all the way up to $3. And they diagrammed out what profit that would be for the facility. Finally, of the old documents that were included, you have a master plan from 2002, and we included the entire master plan, which came from Water's Edge. Interestingly enough, Water's Edge was one of the companies that submitted a proposal through this process, so we were able to engage them during their interview about the master plan and their recommendations during that time. They partnered with Butcher, Willis, and Ratcliffe to do an evaluation of the facility and make recommendations for the future. They let the commission know at that time that 10 to 15 years could be expected if some changes and updates and things were done to the facility. That is about the time that the pool had left. And that was in 2002. So 2012 to present time, 2019, here we are. And so they were able to speak to that if you watched the interview and talk a little bit about their master plan. The facility in 2002, around the time that this master plan was created, was losing 480,000 gallons per day or 43.2 million gallons per season. And they were able to attribute 800,000 of that per season to evaporation. During the process of the master plan, the commission decided to go ahead and move forward and make these changes in hopes of creating a longer life for the pool. And at this time, that's where you see the baby pool with the elephant slide created, the plunge pool with the larger slides, the diving wells, and then there were several other things that were done to the concrete and to ceiling and all of those sorts of things that made the life last longer, that weren't necessarily attractions. Fast forward, 2013, Fred Jones was hired to come to work for the city of Garden City and start looking at the city's water use, not just at the big pool, but across the board. Look at ways to conserve water, look at ways that we could use less, and come up with a plan overall. So between 2013 and the time that the city had their first management season in 2017, there were a lot of different projects done on the pool. And those consisted of massive pieces of concrete being removed and pipes being replaced in the deep end. If you go out there and you look, you can actually see almost like big eyes. So there's a line and a line and then a line cut down the center. And there's 3 of those across the deep end, and those were where they dug out, replaced piping, they resealed joints and on the entire facility, and they did a sealing project on the entire facility to keep the aging concrete intact. That, at the time, we went from losing essentially 400 to 500,000 gallons of water every single day to what we are at now, which is the 200,000 gallons. So improvements have been made and things have been done that have been successful. We just haven't been entirely successful at fixing the entire water loss. When we began operating the facility in 2017 as a staff, we really took it on as this combined effort. It wasn't going to just be the assistant city manager or the parks department or the water department or whoever. We were going to really take this on as a joint effort and all work together, and we did that. We had all of our meetings as teams, we talked about all the different issues together and weighed what should be done or how we should do things, and we really did it with I would say a newfound excitement and probably a collaborative effort that hadn't really been seen before for all of these departments working on one issue at a time. So it was really good. But over the course of 2017 and 2018, we realized that what we thought were problems of management or how the facility was being managed, we found out were not issues of management and were just truly issues of the big pool. And at that time is when we came to you in October of 2018 and decided that we needed some direction from you. We needed to know how you wanted to continue to operate this facility and how you wanted us to move forward in bringing you whatever information you needed to make that decision. And in October of 2018 is when you decided that you wanted to get some community input. You wanted a process by which to gather information and reaction from your community members. And so we did that. Included in your packet was the Path to Future Public Water Recreation. And we believe this really shows what has happened over the last 9 months and where we are today. So the first circle is really that initial discussion that you had in 2018 about budget and about water loss and about all of the things that factored into you needing community input. The second circle was the community input process. We talked generally in October about what you wanted to see the community input process look like, and then there was some inputs from the outside, and it ended up into this process where we talked to most of the grade school and high school kids and community members that were interested in having that conversation. And we also did a survey, and we included here a presentation that was done. So the presentation that we gave throughout all of these different locations, we also recorded for those who were not able to attend. And so we included that link here. And then we included all of the survey data again, just for anybody who was interested or didn't get to see it the first time around. The third circle represents the step that you all took after receiving the survey information. So we came back to you, I believe it was in April, and brought you all of the survey data and kind of gave you a breakdown of where that information was leading you or what it might be saying about what the community wanted you to do. At that time, you approved a request for proposal process that would go from April 2nd until May 20th. And at the end of that process, we would take that information, those proposals that we were given, and we would turn those into social media efforts and also a utility mailer that the community, that you could receive community reaction to the proposals from the companies that submitted them. We, during that period of time, received 3, Water's Edge, Confluence, and I say Confluence because they are the leading partner in a group of partners. It's about 5 or 6 different firms that are working together, but they are the leading partner that's running it. And then finally, Burbach Aquatics. And all of those proposals were attached by link. Some of them were very lengthy and had a lot of color, so we didn't want to attach them. We wanted to make sure you could go straight to them. The fourth circle was actually getting those proposals out to the community and receiving them back. We asked them to rate the proposals 1, 2, or 3, 1 being your favorite, 2 being your second favorite, and 3 being your third favorite. We felt that the rating system really would give us more information than saying which one do you like best. Do you like 1 best, 2 best, or 3 best? We wanted to see what their reaction was to each one individually. And so that's what this did. We received 83 total hard copy responses. We received 780 online on our Facebook or website. So total, 822 responses. The favorite overall of the 3 by the community was 373 #1 votes to Confluence. The second favorite was Burbach Aquatics, and the least favorite was Water's Edge at 329. You can see the charts that depict those representations by numbers. During this period of time, we also included in the forms that went out and on our website an email address where people could submit questions about the process, about things they wanted us to ask during the interview process, or just general questions that they had about why we were having this discussion. We received several emails. Some of them had amazing questions that really made me think about the process and made me pull information and pull data, and we tried to answer every single one of those. I believe that we did, and it was great to have those questions because I think it gave the community a quick outlet to ask something, but also gave us a chance to really look into the things that they had questions about. Also, during this period of time, as we were collecting these, our communications department really went after a communications effort on things that were happening around the big pool. So the first thing we did was a Friday fact sheet, and we tried to answer questions that we had seen come up or questions that we had received by email. The biggest issues that were voiced over social media related to admission price, sales tax, location, company interviews, and preserving the history. I think those really speak across the board through this entire process. Those are the things that have come up over and over again, so I don't think that was anything new. The thing that got probably the most interest was the time-lapse video that we posted of the pool losing 200,000 gallons of water. It was a 24-hour video that we slowed down to about 12 seconds or maybe a minute, something like that. And you were able to actually watch the water loss out of the pool. It got a ton of engagement. Overall, during this process, the things that we posted to social media had contact with 6,295 people and averaged 217 reactions. The fifth circle was the formal interview process, and this took place over one day on July 11th. Both firms, and I say both firms because we actually had 3 firms that were involved in the proposal process, but one of them during the period of time in which we were setting interviews had their principal engineer pass away, and so they were not able to acquire a principal engineer. They have since done that, and if you so chose, you could at the end of this include them in your decision-making process. However, they were not included in the interviews, and so we don't have that information from them. But the interview panel was made up of Aaron Stewart, the Recreation Commission Superintendent, Andy Liebelt, Park Superintendent, Shannon Dick, City Commissioner, Londa Duval, President of Economic Development, Tyler Patterson from the Electric Warehouse Manager, Sam Curran, Public Works Director, Fred Jones, Water Resource Manager, and myself. We felt like this really represented all of the areas and all of the people who touched or had contact with the facility and might have questions based on what the information was from the 2 companies. Both interviews lasted over 2.5 hours and were very thorough. We linked those to this document so that you could watch them. They're also available on our Facebook and on our website, so please feel free to take a look at those. At the end of those interviews, we had a really great discussion, almost an hour long, among those on the board about what we felt like the interviews told us about each one of the firms and what a recommendation might be to the commission. It was not a unanimous decision, but it was a majority, and a majority of the group felt as though Confluence was the better fit for our community and what we were trying to achieve, which was something that wowed everyone. The idea was that if we're going to replace something like the big pool that has everyone's attention, then you want to replace it with something, whether it's a feature, whether it's some piece that's kept of the big pool. We saw a really cool design that was done of a pool that was not as large as ours, but very large, and they kept the end half circle moon of what the existing pool was, and they turned it into a diving pool that as people dove in, the water splashed over the edge like an infinity pool. It was very cool. When you saw an aerial of the facility, you could definitely see the old pool, even though all of this new stuff was around it. So we felt like there were some ideas out there that really would grab the community's attention, and we felt like Confluence was really zoned into that. We felt like they had spent a couple of days in our community prior to the interviews. They had spent some time at the pool. They actually went out to the pool and tested our humidity and a lot of other things factoring into the water loss at the pool, and were able to tell us that between 12 to 16,000 gallons of water could be per day could be attributed to evaporation and splashing, and the rest was purely leaving the facility. So that was really, really interesting that they spent that amount of time in our community and looked at all of the things that we were considering as well. So that brings us to now. We've, as a staff, have brought you your process, 3/4 of the way done, and now you have to kind of take that last 1/4 of the way and figure out where you go from here. As it was read to you, you have 3 decisions really to make today. The first one is, should there be a 2020 season of the big pool as it is today? It seems really simple, yes or no. You could decide to go another season. You could decide to end at the end of this season. Only you can make that decision. We have brought you all of the information, and we can answer questions about this season or about next season to the best of our ability, but there are some that we probably won't be able to answer. I included in here what Confluence suggested because they were the majority pick by the group that did the interviews. They suggested opening in 2020. They suggested then being closed in 2021 so that you would have a full cycle of time for construction of your new facility, because you would get better rates with contractors if you give them that longer period. They did believe that it could be done in a 9-month period if you closed at the end of a season and started and opened at the end of the next season, if there weren't any weather issues and there weren't any unforeseen circumstances, but you would for sure pay a higher price for that from contractors because they knew that's what you were pushing for. Their idea was that really you would open your new facility in 2022 in celebration of this 100-year anniversary of the big pool. Celebrate the previous 100 years and celebrate the 100 years going forward. And they talked about all of the things they had done in other communities around the history and preserving the history, and we really felt like those were a good fit for our community. So that's the first decision you have to make. The second decision you have to make is, what is the future of public recreation, public water recreation, as you all subsidize it? What does that look like? Are you going to continue to do it, or are you not going to continue to do it? If the answer is no, the discussion ends and we can finish wherever you decommission the big pool. If the answer is yes, then we need to take a few more steps forward. And those steps can only be taken with the decision of who you want to work with. Which one of the firms do you want to choose to continue this process with? From there will be a lot of other decisions you have to make, but those are not decisions you have to make today. I do want to leave them with you. You're going to have to make decisions on features and cost, how you incorporate and preserve history, admission costs, and how you balance the percent you recover versus the percent you subsidize. Those are the things that you've been talking about over the last 9 months, your community's been talking about, and the things that are going to be most important to making this successful. At this time, luckily enough, you don't have to make any of those particular decisions. You will make those with whichever firm you decide to move forward with. But I did include them here, the features, the cost, and we broke it out over 10, 15, and 20 years for debt service, and how you would also want to include your part of your operation expenses in that, so that it was all covered. We also include the incorporation and preservation of history. Confluence talked about how they spend time at festivals and visiting places around the community, not holding public meetings, but asking people to tell them about the best memories they've had at the big pool, or the stories they can remember of it being built or growing up there. And they take that and they figure out a way to incorporate that into the history and the new facility. Admission costs, we obviously charge $2 to get in, and we've heard from many that that might be too much even for the current facility. But we've also heard that there might be a $3 maximum, by which once you surpass $3, there's a lot of families here who can't afford to get in. So that's definitely going to be something that you're going to have to set, because at the end of the day, that's going to affect your ability to cost recover from the facility and the amount that you have to subsidize the facility, which is the next part. So with that, and all of the information that you've been given over the last 9 months, we hope as staff that we have done what you've asked and that we've brought you all of the information that you need to make this decision. We are happy to answer any further questions about the process or about any of the information that we've given you, or anything else that anyone has.
Well, I had a couple of questions. So the interviews were really well done, and they were long, so especially if you're watching on a little computer. But I'm curious about this idea, so from the confluence, it felt like they were talking more about a destination rather than public recreation. I mean, it had aspects of both because it really honored the community. So I'm curious, because a lot of the pools that you compared this to, some of them feel like destination, but I don't know. So what is your thought as far as going through this? Is it a destination where people will come and that might be some of the draw, or is it more of, you know, we call it public recreation, but I'm curious about what your thoughts are, because both had aspects of that.
I think, first of all, I don't necessarily get an opinion in that of what you choose to do. That's not up to me to decide whether or not you make it a community-only facility or something that's geared solely towards your community or something that's geared towards you want all of the people from all of the places. I think there's a balance. I think you can achieve both. I think you can be heavily weighted towards one or the other, but that was not necessarily did not necessarily play a role into the interviews. In the interviews, we were just trying to gauge all the way from one spectrum to the other spectrum of information and see what have these companies done. Do we think that it's unique? Do we think that they could do a good job? Do we think they're a good fit for our community? Those were really the things that we were looking at. And I don't think even in any of the discussions during that interview process or at the end of that interview process in our deciding of the firms, did that board ever discuss destination versus community? I think that's something for you all to discuss and definitely decide.
I'd just like to say one thing. Let's go around and each one of us talk about it, and then maybe we'll let the public make comments. How's that? So you start.
Yeah, I found this memo incredibly illuminating, particularly the safety aspects that were detailed in a lot of the past engineering evaluations. The ADA requirements with the bathhouse, the cement, the guttering, the shape of the walls, the filtration systems, the chlorinator, all of these issues that have been somewhat rectified, somewhat tried to kind of, amended to be standard and safe for the current public. But as I read, and it just continued to compound and compound and compound, it was just very striking to me. The status of this facility and how it just has outrun its lifespan. My specific question at this juncture is about the chlorinators and the problems that we've experienced this year and kind of what the status is there. And I think it does play into the question that you asked first about the next year's season.
The chlorinator is functioning, and so we had some questions about algal growth and things like that in the deep end. When we go around and measure the chlorine levels at different points in the pool, where we injected into the pool, we've been injecting at about 10 parts per million, which is pretty high. We really don't want to make it any higher than that because that would exceed what the pool industry recommends for a dosage. We find similar residuals, in the 8 and 9 parts per million up in the shallow end of the pool. That's getting good chlorine. When you look at the pool, you can see that it's getting good chlorine. That level drops down quite a bit in the deep end. And there's, in my mind, there's one major reason why that's happening is because in the deep end, there's an inadequate guttering system. If you were to go to the pool today and you stand on the east side of the pool, the water comes right up to the scum gutters. If you go to the west side of the pool, the scum gutters are probably about 3.5 inches out of the water. So that's something we can't correct unless we figure out how to tilt the earth at that particular location. What that does, though, is the organic material that comes into the pool from trees, dust, dirt, you name it. If the gutter systems are not functioning properly, that wave action, where the gutters would typically capture a lot of that stuff before it settles down to the bottom of the pool, it's not effective in the deep end. And so the deep end is a maintenance problem. There's 30-some thousand square feet of water in the deep end. It's tough to get to with vacuums and equipment. The pool definitely needs more equipment for maintenance of that quantity of square feet of water. But even if you were doing that, you still, the the circulation system, so to speak, is not functional. And the filtration is undersized. If you look at the diagrams of the master plans, you see they have, on Water's Edge most recent, they have 5 filter units. There's actually only 4 units that are there in place. They're nearing the end of their lifespan as well. We've had to do a major overhaul on one of those filters already this season.
Mr. Jones, could you speak to that a little bit more in depth for those folks who are at home or in the public who have questions about, well, what have you done to try and fix this problem to date?
Well, we had a filter that one of the issues that was pointed out in one of the technical reports is the piping, the way the piping is done in the pool. You're not really using the ideal quality of water to do your backwashing processes. What we're finding is the filters they're a tank, and in that tank they have different types of sand in there, and so there's a finer sand on top and then a more larger granule sand on the bottom. And then underneath it there's laterals, kind of like the way a septic system would work, and that water comes out into those laterals. What we're finding is just because we're not able to use filtered water to backwash the filters, those laterals are getting plugged up with hard water deposits, any kind of material that isn't captured through the pool. It goes into that lateral, and the laterals just have very fine slots in them that allow the water to pass through, so it can be distributed over a larger surface area. So those are going to continue to be a problem. They've functioned pretty well since we've taken over the pool. We hadn't had any issues with them, but this year we are experiencing some issues with the filters, and I think it's just the units are aging.
And was the chlorinator calcified at one point, or?
We use the chlorine material that the pool uses is a calcium chloride tablet. So it's a calcium and sodium tablet that holds the chlorine so it can be handled safely. And then when it's immersed in water, then it releases the chlorine into the water that way. It's very similar to what you would buy at your big box store if you had a backyard pool. That's the type of system that the pool uses, and it uses a pretty significant amount of chlorine every day.
Anything else? Commissioner?
So, well, and then I want to first of all thank you for the process and that it's been over a year. And so, I mean, there's a a lot of times it's speaking to the loss of something or your potential perceived loss. And so the big pool has been a part of my life and my family's life, ever since we moved here to Garden City. So I've grown up in the big pool, my kids have grown up in the big pool, and I get the opportunity to lifeguard at the big pool. And so, seeing the lifespan of something as valuable and knowing the history is really great. I appreciated Confluence's idea of preserving the history. That means a lot to me, and I know it means a lot to our community. But I also, there's the safety issues. The pool is totally safe right now. There's nothing wrong with the pool. It is aging. The facility, you talk about the difference in the water levels and how much money do you put into a facility that really, unless you really tear the whole thing out, you can get the same thing. It's really, you're not going to get much. So I was excited about, I didn't realize it was 100 years because I wasn't there back that time. So, nope. I know. I wasn't there when it started. But I know that a lot of, not only has technology changed, but also what it takes to attract people to the pool. And one of my main components, one of the things I love the most is watching families go and play together at the pool. And so that's why I asked the question about, public recreation is important to me, and watching families together at the pool is one of my favorite things. And just seeing how they interact, and then also this is something they're passing down, and having fun together is really important. So I'm all for public recreation and water recreation. It's the biggest body of water, if you can believe it, for miles around. So that's important. So the thing I think that's really important too is attracting more people to the big pool. The deep end is huge. I don't think there's enough people to agitate the water enough. The thing is huge, and even if you have 200-300 people in the deep end, you still have as much water as you want to yourself. So one of my goals is when thinking about the big pool is really how do we attract more people? And I'm curious about, sometimes when, you experience a loss or the potential loss of something, people would come down and, be there more often. And I've asked a lot of people who've been on Facebook or have emailed or called, and I've said, well, have you been down there this year or the last couple of years? No, they haven't, but they talk about the memories. So that's one thing I really appreciated, Confluence talking about those memories. I have really great memories of the big pool, but I also understand that it's time to do something. It feels like it's been moved down. The history was incredible, and that we're facing the same thing. But yeah, I like I said, I think it's time for something to happen with the big pool, and I'm really ready to move forward.
Mr. Dave?
I think like everybody's getting at, I can't imagine Garden City without a water recreation. The big pool is what's been doing that. When we're talking about with the companies that came in to do that, when they looked at how much it would cost to rebuild something like the big pool, it's prohibitive. I mean, it's just getting what we had back is expensive. And when they're talking about the capacity of the big pool, the capacity they said is like 4,000 people is what it can hold. So obviously it's a unique structure, but I can't imagine Garden City without having a publicly funded water recreation alternative, and one that's of significant size, where, I mean, we're not just talking about just some small pools. I mean, it needs to be something that pays homage to that. And like Troy was saying, that history is very important to us and to our community. I mean, that's who we are. So as we move forward with this, we need to make sure that we pay appropriate attention to making sure we preserve that history and carry it forward. Carry with, like we had the idea of maybe preserving a section as part of the new integrated system like that, keeping those memories alive in some sort of way with the water skis and all of the jet boat and the water skiers and stuff like that as part of what makes Garden City, because that's what we need to make sure we do, because this has been such a big portion of what we are as a community. At the same time, we're probably about 40 years past the lifespan of the big pool, and I think we've done a very good and smart job of trying to get it as far along as possible, but at some time it's just not possible anymore. I mean, talking with the experts when they came in about if there's something you can do, and there's just not anything you can do besides completely tearing it out and putting it back in, and that is very, very cost prohibitive. So I do think we need to be doing something, and this is, I think, the time to be discussing exactly what we need to be doing moving forward.
Okay. Well, I'm one of the old guys, and I've been here, and that pool has been probably something that a lot of people relate to, and I understand all that. It's, correct me if I'm wrong, 2.5 million gallons, right?
Correct, or 2.2 million gallons.
2.2 million. Some of the problems that I think the biggest problem right now why we don't have any swimmers is because it's too cold. And the way, we've had to add so much water that it doesn't have a chance to warm up. And I can remember the time when every 2 to 3 weeks you drain it, no filtration, and it was cold for a while, but it would eventually warm up, and then it was dirty again. So, I definitely feel like we should support recreation, public water recreation, but I think we probably need to scale it back from what we have. I don't think we can. Just the idea of the filtration for that kind of a pool, and so I did like the idea of trying to maybe the outline of the original pool, tie it in, and with that, I think that would be good. And I think, the location isn't ideal, But I don't think we want to put in two different pools, one north, one south. I don't like to divide the community that way, and I think probably that area is where it needs to be if we're gonna build a pool. One question I had, did any of them move the new pool to the east? Like, I just wondered if you could build the pool there and then do something with the old pool?
So the designs were basically almost over the existing facility and incorporated that entire area, whether it be for parking or buildings or landscaped areas for sitting, more deck space, more shade space.
Okay.
They really incorporated the entire area. And one of them, I can't remember if it was Confluence or Water's Edge, but they actually put their new facility over the top of the big pool, and you could kind of see a corner sticking out of the facility of the big pool to see where that overlay went. And you could really see, but they didn't move it per se out of that spot.
Both of them discussed doing a location study, though, I believe, right? We're about to make sure that really is the location.
So all of both of the firms that we talked to in the interview process really appreciated all that had been done, and the commission's engagement and staff's engagement and the community's engagement. They were impressed. Both firms said it was unlike anything they had ever been part of. And they've been in the business for a long time, and so they were both really excited to work with a community that was willing to give up that information. And so they said there would be further research on whether or not that was truly the right location, whether there were other things that the community needed or wanted or fit into the scope of what the commission wanted. Those will be things that whoever you choose is going to come before you and talk those out with you and talk them out with the community and help you get to that endpoint. But you don't have to decide that today. Those are things that when they come, they will work through with you and help you facilitate those conversations with your community.
Well, and I was thinking back to the idea, when you think back to the zoo, and our zoo today is incredible, outstanding, and it takes care of the animals really well, which is really important, and all these requirements. But you think about, I don't know if many of you remember Monkey Island, but that's, there's a lot of these things that, I think about our zoo today, and then what it was back then. And the way the animals are treated, the way the zoo is laid out, how it attracts and impacts families, to me it's that same discussion here with the big pool. I liked Confluence that they actually added. I've always wondered what we use that big grassy thing for other than just mowing and watering. But, I think I did question parking because I think it's going to be very attractive, especially for the first several years. So parking might be an issue, and I don't know that there's enough parking. But I do think that, I was thinking back to when the zoo, and as they've made changes and as it's improved, and I wouldn't trade our zoo today mainly because of the treatment of the animals and the way that we honored our public. And so, some of the things that we're doing now, to me, it's that same issue with the big pool as a way to also honor the public.
The other thing that I wanted to mention was, I think we could put in like a couple splash parks because, maybe one over on 8th Street, maybe one in the northeast. And that way, the smaller kids would go there and, you don't have to have a lifeguard there. Basically, you do have to filter the water, but, maybe we could look into that. But I think we've got some tough decisions, and at this time, I'd like to ask anybody in the public that in the audience that wants to come up and address the commission to step forward, state your name. Anybody? I'm sure somebody's got a comment. Okay.
I'm Bob Lewis, and I grew up with the big pool like a lot of us here. I remember when it was without a filter system, too. I learned to swim there, and I'm coming at this from a fitness competitive swimmer perspective. I started competitive swimming when I was 10. I swam on the first YMCA team. I was the high school team. I swam in college, and to this day I swim competitively. So as I said, that's my perspective on this. I know that we have a very strong high school program here now, which I'm glad to see, both men, girls and boys. I know that I think it's Blue Tide has a very strong age group program, and it's popular, which is great. I will say that despite the fact that master swimmer or adult competitive swimming has become very, very popular in the country over the last 10, 15 years, that I don't see that in our community, and that's too bad, and there's no reason that it can't change. I swim in the big pool for the last 2 summers almost daily, and there's few times that I'm ever joined by anybody swimming in the pool. But I think this is an opportunity to engage more adults in swimming, and so that's what I think we should, one of the goals that we should seek to attain. So I wanted to make comment about the pool, and they're fairly simple, straightforward comments, and I'm sure that people have probably thought about it, but I wanted to emphasize them. First of all, the size of the pool. I think our current pool is something like 100 yards or meters long by 75 yards or meters wide, which is very strange and makes it unique, right? But this one should really be regulation. There are two seasons in competitive swimming, as people probably know. There's a short course, which is 25 yards, and there's a long course, which is summer, and that's 50 meters. And what I would recommend is that the pool be 50 meters by 25 yards. The proposals I saw, and I was just looking at this, there may be, I'm sure there's more detail. It looked like they were 50 meters by maybe 8 lanes, which is probably a little shy of 25 yards. I don't know. I would think that you'd probably need 10 lanes to make it 25 yards. But that would give you the opportunity, as I said, to have competitive swimming, short course, long course in the same pool. And if you're gonna build something 22 yards wide, you might as well build it 25. Second, and I think I'm looking at the Confluence proposal. Looks like it might have some of this. It wasn't clear, but there should be some spectator seating. In the current pool, I've gone over there during this, when the Blue Tide has their program, their meet, and you can't, you stand outside, you can't see anything, and 10 minutes later you get tired and leave. But I think if there was spectator seating, that would encourage people to be more engaged in the programs. And then the diving well, you definitely need a diving well, and the Confluence plan has one sort of L-shaped, which makes a lot of sense. You could also, if it's a cost issue, you could have the diving well in the deep end of the 50-meter pool. I suppose that I've seen that a lot too. And then another point, and I've actually spoken over the noon hour with two commissioners about this. You're building something that at least currently is used 2.5 months of the year, and it's a shame that it can't be used for a longer period of time. And one solution would be to make it indoors, or some fashion so you could make it indoor-outdoor. I understand from talking to people that they've talked to the contractors about that, and they discourage that because they haven't had good luck with that. That's too bad, but if that's the case, that's the case. One solution, which we spoke about this afternoon, was if you heat the pool, which you presumably would, you could extend the season from, early May to end of September even, if you had it, people interested in swimming. I've swum in pools in 32-degree weather, and if it's heated, you've got steam coming up, but you're still, you're fine. So those are my comments. I think this is fantastic for the community. I guess this goes to the question destination versus community. I would like to see this as a destination pool for a lot of reasons, but it should be, and I think it could be, the best competitive swimming facility between Wichita and Denver. And if that's the case, you would get 2 or 3, 4 swim meets here each year, and that would bring revenue to the community, and it would be a real plus. Thank you.
Thanks for
Thank
your
you.
comments. Anyone else? Okay.
Mayor, Commissioners, Manny Ortiz. I'm just like, I was born here in '78, so I'm sure I was in my mom's womb while she was swimming, so I've known the pool for a long time. I just think, and if I was in your shoes, I would probably suggest or ask the public to maybe meet the capacity of the pool and answer some of these questions that you're being asked, just to maybe ease your decision. So if I was in your shoes, I think that would be something that I would probably ask for. But again, I do like to compete, and with our rivals being in Dodge, I know that a lot of people go over there. So it's just one of those things, a lot of people say we're not in competition with Dodge, but I think we are. So my wife's over there in Dodge right now, so that's, I just think that we should actually consider this being, like Bob said, a destination. I think just having the public, 700 votes or whatever it was, didn't satisfy me, I guess, in making that decision. I think if the pool's 4,000 people capacity, maybe we should ask those 4,000 people if we can. Maybe it's a day, kind of like we dedicate some of these days to people and recommend or recognize those people. Maybe it's recognize the big pool day to get some of those questions answered from the public. That's kind of what I'm thinking. So that's all I
Okay,
got.
thanks. Anybody else? Okay, step up. State your name, please.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioners. I'm Heather Nealand, and I am an assistant tennis coach at the high school. And I never thought that I would be talking about swimming, but my daughter is a Blue Tide swimmer, and so now I have become very passionate about it, watching her swim the past couple years. There are 150 kids just on Blue Tide swimming. They won the Western Conference, the Western Kansas Conference swim meet here last Saturday. And, there were, and as far as, I agree with everything that gentleman said back there earlier. And I just wanted to clap the whole time, but I think it can be both. I'm not from here, I'm from Nebraska, but I can tell you 15 years ago when we first moved here, that like the two main things that wowed us were the zoo and the pool, the big pool. And we spent every afternoon there. And so it's special to me too, even though I wasn't born and raised here. And I know that our high school teams are very good, and it's not going away. The competitive part of swimming is not going away. And a town this size, we really have to do something to keep up with the other towns as far as the competition aspect of the pool. I mean, you go to Hayes or you go to Dodge, and you go to these places and they have these really nice facilities, and everybody's they're just, and then they come here and we go cram ourselves in the YMCA in the winter, and it's awful, and it's awful for the swimmers. And so I hope that that we can do something, because this sport is blowing up, and it's not going anywhere. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else?
Hi, my name is Marla Garcia, and I wasn't born here, but I've been here since I was 1 year old. Grew up at the pool as well. Memories, same thing as everybody else. I'm not a swimming person, but I'm willing to deal with that. We come from soccer and enjoy soccer, and maybe that can be fixed later here as well. But the pool, I agree, needs to stay there. You mentioned splash parks. that is going to require supervision, not so much from a lifeguard, but somebody to supervise, because there's vulnerable people that would visit that. I agree, destination is a good idea. However, it needs to be affordable, because there are people like myself that cannot probably afford more than $5, per person, $3. So that's a big topic is what it's going to cost to get into this place that you guys are going to make a decision on. All the ideas that Confluence threw out there were really good. I mean, I watched the YouTube. Yes, it was long. Both of them were long. But they awoken questions and ideas that we didn't think about. Maybe it doesn't have to be a huge water park, and like Mr. Ortiz said, compete against Dodge, but keeping it there, reconstruct it. It's historical, and it's the big pool, and it's, we want to keep it there, but the idea of just tearing it all down and rebuilding is even a good idea, to keep it at least at a decent price to get in. Another thing that I might suggest is, having, now they do a free day. I don't know if they have them this year or not, a free day where people get in for free. They did often last year. But, for if it's going to be pricey or up there in that price range, free days, once a month, or, so people can get out there. But I agree. They also mentioned about, the entrance and the traffic, and even the entrance is historical. Lee Richardson Zoo, the arch when you're driving in, that there's just a lot to work with, seriously. Going east, like you mentioned, is a good idea. But you've got the ballpark there that you're going to be dealing with as well. So I don't know, how they want to redo this, but just even the idea of changing the entrance is worrying some. The wave pool, the lazy river, the competition swim lane area, even the covered area for swimming is a great idea, but there's cost with that as well. But definitely needs to stay there, is my opinion, and most important is the cost, if it's going to be within the reach of the people that are going to be affected the most. But that's it. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks. Anyone else? Okay. Well, I guess the first thing we need to do is,
Well, I have a question. When Commissioner Burns talked about the overall safety of the, and opening the pool. If we decide to open the pool in 2020, are there safety issues a concern as far as the chlorination, or is it, would it be safe to open for another season? Are we confident of that? And I just want to make sure. I think it can be, but I just want to make sure and hear from.
I'll let Fred and Mike weigh in on this as well, but I'll give you the same answer that I've given anyone else who has asked this question. Whether it be the season that we're in or whether it be the 2020 season, with the age and the stage the big pool is at, it could happen any day. We could get a call tomorrow that there's something wrong that is a $500,000 fix that's not budgeted for, and there could be a determination at that point by all of you that the pool will not continue. We could make it all the way through the rest of this season and all the way through 2020. I wouldn't put money, if I was a betting person, on either one of those, because I just don't know where we're at. I will tell you that what Fred talked about with the chlorination issue, when we went through that issue this summer, there was a point in time where we were not getting chlorine into the facility. We were testing multiple areas and there was no chlorine in the water. And so during that process, we weren't sure what was going to happen. We didn't know if it was going to be a closure with a waiting period where we figured out what the issue was and then we were able to reopen. I had staff in canoes with white erasers at the bottom of a broom, hand scrubbing the bottom of the middle of the pool. That is still happening, just to keep moving forward. And so my staff people who are cleaning the facility are upwards of 20 hours of overtime every 2 weeks. And so that is something for your consideration. Does it stop us from having a 2020 season? Absolutely not. But from staffing and cleaning and that sort of perspective, that's where I come from in the 2019 or 2020 season. But we would, at your direction, do whichever you request.
And I specifically asked the question because I think that there is part of this decision that is evaluating risk and trying to anticipate what we might be looking at and managing expectations.
Yep.
And so if we have all of that information, you know, with all of that out there, then let's make a decision on the pool closure or not, and then be able to very clearly say, and this is why we are not able to accept this level of risk.
No,
So
and I
thank you for
appreciate
that,
that.
Jennifer.
Well, Fred was on vacation the week that the chlorinator pump failed. So
So I shouldn't have put
Always
you on the
happens.
spot,
Always
Fred.
happens.
Convenient.
Always happens.
what happened was there's 2 chlorination pumps. One of them, the chlorinator injects water into the water that comes out of the filters. Well, the filter was completely plugged up and it was not working at all. So we had to completely bypass, put in all new lines from the chlorinator pump to a new injection part for the water that bypassed the filters. So the chlorination, at least on that section, is not being filtered, which is fine. That's why the chlorination is so high at that end of the pool. When we took out that filter to see why it was not working, there was pictures, and there's places in the bottom of that pool that in the bottom of that filter that it's 2.5 feet thick. And the pipe that Fred talked about, the vent pipes in there, completely plugged up. When we even replaced the piping a few years ago, some of that piping in there was 6-inch piping, and it had a hole about that big around because it's, so, you know, Jennifer is absolutely right that this afternoon we could get a call and that thing could be out of commission. It could run for another year just fine, but me too, I wouldn't bet on either one of those. Safety-wise, you know, the chlorination is fine now. It's safe on the shallow end of the pool. The deep end of the pool is not quite as much. We've been trying to work to help clean. We've looked at different vacuums we could probably purchase and use them somewhere else. But it is what it is.
What about, could we, I mean, the design professionals, they're going to take, you know, 6 months, whatever, 4 months to design and do interviews and all that. So, you know, you're looking at the end of the year. So, and then you got to take bids, and then,
Right.
so you probably couldn't even start anything till later on in 2020, right?
As for construction, is that what
Yeah,
you're asking, Mayor?
yeah.
Yeah, so I don't think that there's a presumption that we would, whether you choose to have a 2020 season or not, that there would be any construction that would start in 2019. I think the soonest your construction could begin is in 2020. It would all be about, if you didn't have a 2020 season, the projection from you all and the direction from you all would be, okay, are we trying to move really quickly to get open in 2021, or are we trying really, I say really quickly, quicker, or are we trying to move more slowly and target that 2022? You know, there's pros and cons both ways. One of the things that you all will remember from budget discussions is we did budget the operations budget for 2020, but nothing more. So if there was some cost that came up, we wouldn't have the funds available unless we found them from another location, which sometimes Melinda's really good at doing. But that's not always a guarantee, right, as we're having these discussions. And so if there was something like that, we might not be able to facilitate that continuation. The positive of having those operation funds there is that they could be used towards the design and the start of this project, and potentially, I'm not speaking for any contractors or any design professionals, but potentially could open in 2021 if that's what you desire. So there's all of these things that you're weighing in a 2020 season or not a 2020 season.
Well, do we have to make that decision today?
Is that what you were trying?
Yeah. Or can we, I mean, we've got to make, I think we're all in agreement that we want to fund public recreation, water recreation, right?
I would put one small amendment that says affordable in there as well. I mean,
Yeah.
affordable to
Yeah.
to our community. But yes.
what's affordable to you? 10 million?
What's affordable?
5 million?
I'm saying the affordable water recreation is affordable in the end to the end user, to our
that
community.
Affordable, yeah.
Right, I think that, I mean, that speaks to the point that the lady was making. It's pointless for us to build a facility that is unaffordable and makes it therefore inaccessible. I'm not interested in building a facility to draw people from other communities that our community can't use. I do think that that is all part of the calculation that's been laid out here. How much debt service are we able to take care of? And to what, and we recognize there's going to be a subsidy to this. What is the appetite of the community? How much is that competition swim facility worth to you? What is, what does that lazy river translate as far as what you're willing to publicly fund? And I think those are really valid questions. Luckily, that's not the question.
Right.
It's always
Right.
a calculation in our mind, but it's not the question to be called today. I think the first question to be called today is, do we open next year? And I would make a motion that we do not.
So
open for 2020.
If I can jump in really quick.
I guess I shouldn't tag motions onto my statements, huh?
So we tried, so
Randy, you're supposed to kick me with that.
So staff tried to go through all of the ways you could form your decision today. So I'm going to read those, and then you can maybe choose one of those. Or you can not choose one of those and make your own. That's totally fine too. But the first one is to direct staff to operate the big pool in 2020 for its final season and begin working with Confluence on options for a future publicly funded water recreation facility. Number 2 is direct staff to operate the big pool in 2020 for its final season and begin working with Water's Edge on options for a future publicly funded water recreation facility. Number 3 is decommission the big pool at the end of 2019 season and begin working with Confluence on a new water recreation facility. Number 4, decommission the big pool at the end of 2019 season and begin working with Water's Edge on a new water recreation facility. Number 5, open the big pool in 2020 and after that season stop providing publicly funded water recreation. Number 6, close the big pool after the 2019 season and stop providing publicly funded water recreation. Number 7, provide other directions for the big pool and the future of publicly funded water recreation.
I'd like to amend my motion to be number 3, decommission.
Well, it wasn't seconded yet, so.
Okay,
Just make
so
sure.
please let it fail.
So restate it.
Okay. I do want to make a motion for alternative number 3, decommission the big pool at the end of the 2019 season, begin working with Confluence, as that seems to be the recommendation of both public and the interview process, on a new water recreation facility.
Is there a second to that motion? I'll second it. Okay. So that was number 3.
So, so we're going to have some discussion.
Yeah, we'll have discussion.
So the reason I'm not seconding, or the reason I'm not in favor of that is that I think this idea of speaking to loss, giving the community a chance to say goodbye to the big pool is going to be really important. I don't think the 2019 season, I don't think that's adequate. So I think this idea of giving the community a chance in 2020 to say, hey, this is goodbye. I do like the idea of Confluence in 2022, it's the 100-year anniversary. So it's a whole new big pool. So that's why I'm not going to be in favor of that. But I think giving people a chance to say goodbye to something, especially the old timers like myself, who it's really important. So one more time. So.
And I agree. Fiscally, the most responsible thing would be to close it down this year, or at the end of the year, and not have a 2020 season. But I think for the legacy of the big pool, and for the people that might not, if somebody's in Wyoming and said, "Oh, I didn't even know this was happening," I need to come out before it's gone. I don't know if we can adequately serve those people with just this season. At the same time, I think we will have to go into it saying if something goes wrong,
right,
at any time, that last time you went to the big pool might be your last time.
Yeah.
We can't invest more capital into this.
Yep.
We can have the lifeguards and all that stuff, but we can't be putting more capital into it. And so that's where I think we're all agreeing on 2/3 of the motion. It's just I think we're stuck with that last 2020 or 2019 piece of it.
So we would be looking at that cost to operate,
Mm-hmm.
plus possible, but not agreeing to any additional capital, plus whatever design consult costs come along.
But the design's going to happen if,
Right,
we're,
that's
if
gonna
we're
be-
down in 19 or 20.
Right, that's going to be rolled into that anyway.
The savings is not having that extra, the 2020 operating budget. I mean, rolling it in. And that's what I said. I mean, fiscally, the responsible thing fiscally to do would be 2019. And 9 times out of 10 or 19 out of 20 times, I'm going to say with the fiscal thing, but there's very few things that are what Garden City is. The zoo is what Garden City is. The big pool is what Garden City is. The multiculturalism is what Garden City is. And sometimes we have to make decisions that maybe aren't the best short-term fiscally, but long-term preserve and give the respect to what Garden City is in those cases.
Anything else? Okay. All those that are in favor of number 3, which is decommission the big pool at the end of 2019 season and begin working with Confluence on a new water recreation facility. All those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Nay. 3 to 1.
So I would make a motion to, number 1, direct staff to operate the big pool in 2020 with the caveat that if we come up with additional expenses that we do not have budgeted, that we would at that time make the
Close it.
decision
Yeah.
for its final decision and begin
It's
working.
not in the motion though, is it? Right?
Should I put that?
you
Okay,
would
no,
make
put that in there. Okay.
Determination at some.
At that time. Okay, so number 1, direct staff to operate the big pool in 2020 for its final season and begin working with Confluence on options for a future publicly funded water recreation facility.
Okay, and any further discussion?
Second?
We'll have a second.
Oh, we
I'll
need a
second.
Okay, moved and seconded that we direct the staff to operate the big pool in 2020 for its final season and begin working with Confluence on options for future publicly funded water recreation facilities. All those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Nay.
Opposed, nay. 1. Okay. That passed. So we will,
I think with
I
that-
guess we'll go from here.
Yeah, I think with that, Mayor, we're ready for the consent agenda. It's items F1 through 3.
I'll make a motion that we approve the consent agenda F1 through 3. Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the consent agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
There's an executive session on the agenda. We don't anticipate action being necessary after that item is over with. So if the commission would like to do their commission reports, then we can have you consider going into executive session and we'll shut down the Channel 8 broadcast.
Okay, Commissioner Dick.
Yeah,
you're
I'm first. First thing I'd like to say that a community member brought up is with the flags on downtown. It seems like they're getting caught a little bit more in the flagpoles and they're ripping up the flags when we have them for 4th of July and some of those things. And we don't know if that's a change to what's happened in the flagpoles or if it's just something is going on, but they were concerned that they were getting caught up a little bit more. So that might be something we need to look into next time we're displaying the flags. Just to see what's going on there, because I noticed it too more. It looked like they were getting caught up on something and snagging. I'd like to thank and recognize the great leadership that we are getting through the Garden City Police Department, bringing up the kids through there, getting them the great training and growing our own in that way as well. It's great to see that. I'd like to thank the pre-meeting about the census and how important that's going to be and how that process all goes. That's going to be a very important piece to our community in 2020, and we need to make sure everybody is educated about that and is aware of all the pieces that go into that. I'd like to very much appreciate Caleb, who he stepped away, but thank him for all the work that he's been doing and has done in the community. That is going to be a very big person to have to replace in the city. And then finally, I'd like to just take the time to just recognize where we're at in Garden City. Like I said a couple times, there's very few things that we can do as a city commission where somebody 50 years from now is going to look back and put a little dot that says this is something that actually mattered. Doing things like DFA helps us now, but nobody's going to talk about that. I mean, we have very few things that gets a dot on a timeline, and the discussion about the big pool and what we do with the big pool is one of those things. And I challenge everybody with the last months that they have left to take advantage of it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Commissioner Unruh.
So I thought it was excellent. The presentation on the census was really well done. I'm really excited about the way that we're going to be conducting that, and so Melissa, really good job on that, and also the department. I know Caleb's not here. Yeah, it's going to be that's going to be a big miss, and so we appreciate all the work he's done, not only for us, but also he's well respected at the city and the county commission, and they're not an easy group. I'm sorry, not like us. And then also the city of Holcomb. But I think that really he's impacted Finney County, and especially us. So he will be missed. I think a day, that's really good. That's probably not enough, but it's, what we do. So I also want to say thank you for the discussion. The amount of information, incredible. I don't know if it makes decisions easier or more difficult but there's so much feedback, and I think we heard talking about more people, and I think we've done that, and I mean it was coming all to this point where I was excited about this day, and I also dreaded this day because there were going to be some hard decisions, and I mean Commissioner Dick talked about there are things that in years in the future that they'll talk about. So having the history of the big pool and how other commissioners wrestled with that. And I'm believing that history will say we've made some good decisions. I also am very excited about what's been going on this summer. There are so many opportunities to get outside and get active. I don't know if the Siege is one of them, but if any of the commissioners wants to do that, I will go and support you at the end. I'll have water or whatever you need. So if any of the commissioners want to do that, I'll be there for you at the end. So I'm just really excited. Again, I think that there's some really great things happening in the Garden City. I really appreciate the position that we have done as a community. I mean, there are decisions that the community makes, and I think that we're making some great decisions. I'm excited about where we're headed in the future, and very optimistic. And I also want to thank Chief Oots and Captain Ralston, and then all the people who are involved with the young people. That is incredible. The Explorers program has meant a lot to my family personally, but I'll tell you, it's meaning a lot to the community. And the things that these young people get to do is scary, and also it's incredible. So I don't want any of them to stop me for a traffic stop, but I think it's really exciting about just the way that we are really training up our youth, and just another opportunity to engage young people in the whole idea of city. So thank you.
Mr. Burns.
Well, it's fair time, so everybody turn out for the Finney County Fair. It's always a good
Chickens.
time. Well, no, I don't really have show chickens. They're more kind of just regular chickens. But I do like going down looking at the chickens. And there's a lot of just really interactive exhibits and cool things, and a lot of kids do a lot of preparation, and there's so much hard work by families that go into it, so I hope everybody goes down and supports it. That being said, I apologize that I am leaving town, and I do regret I'm not going to be here for the next town hall and the first meeting in August, and I regret that. But and I think I'm going to probably miss the candidate forum coming up too. And I wish that I could be here more. I wish that I could attend more events. It's again wonderful that so much goes on. It's just the circumstances of my life right now. So anyway, I do want to say that I'm not shirking my responsibilities. It was a pre-planned situation. Everybody go to the fair.
Well, I'd also like to comment on our pre-meeting. I think all of us learned a lot about the census at 11 o'clock today, so I appreciate that, Melissa. And congratulate Brecken Ralston. I think what he did, I think we were 60, weren't there? So to have 1 out of 60 in the United States and maybe the world, I don't know, that speaks well for him. And the other thing, I want to also thank Caleb and congratulate him and wish him the best on his next phase of life. And also, I want to thank Jennifer and Lauren and Jamie for all the work on this pool reports. And it's been a long process, and we've studied it and restudied it and discussed it. And I think it helps us make some decisions that aren't easy. So I just want to thank them because they put in a lot of time on that. With that, that's all I have. We need to
Yeah, I'll make a motion.
state, yeah, you want to make the motion?
Sure, I would make a motion that we go into executive session pursuant to KSA 75-4319B2 pertaining to consultation with an attorney in the body or agency which would be deemed privileged in the attorney-client relationship. Present for the session should be
Myself, Mr. Allen, and
Jennifer and Mike.
Jennifer and Mike.
counsel, assistant city manager, and public utilities director, please.
And the
For
reason would be potential litigation.
potential litigation.
Yes.
Shall we start at 3:25?
Yeah, let's
for
have a little
period of
And have 15 minutes? Is that
15 minutes.
enough? Okay.
Till 3:40.
Yes.
3:40, okay.
Second.
It's been moved and
Your
seconded
roll
that we go into executive session. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay.
We'll start at 3:25. Thank you, everyone, for coming.
You need to leave and come back.
Thank you.